Today, we are diving into the strategies of a top-performing Strategic Accounts SDR at Muck Rack, Jacob Farmer. Since he joined Muck Rack, he sourced $5.86 million in pipeline, the highest in company history. He brought in over $765,000 in annual recurring revenue, ranking among the top 3 reps. Welcome to the SDR Game, the podcast created to accelerate your sales career and help you build more pipeline. In this episode, you will discover strategies of a successful enterprise SDR, how to organize your day as an SDR, how to use videos in your outreach, and how to adapt your outreach approach. Let's get started. So, Jacob, could we start with your step-by-step breakdown of how you plan to organize your typical workday to maximize productivity?
I think the first step is knowing everything possible that can get accomplished throughout the day, and then calendar blocking tasks for yourself to achieve it. It's relatively intuitive, but in my sector of sales development, there's so many ways you can book a meeting, whether it's from marketing triggers or whether it's from past relationships. There's so many things you can dig into to book a meeting. It can get overwhelming in terms of structuring your day. So what I like to do is kind of have like a whiteboard of like, okay, these are all the ways I can book a meeting. Now, how can I prioritize my time so it's relatively distributed? If you set yourself up for failure by spreading yourself too thin, there's a lack of scale because you're sending one email and one LinkedIn, a note, one call. You're trying to do everything at once. But if you focus on only one method, it doesn't account for market changes. For example, Google and HubSpot, there's something going on with their emails where there's a lower performance in opens and stuff like that. In the UK, they're releasing more legislation on dials, and if I'm in the US, I can't pose as a UK caller and get a UK number. If you only use one method, is not going to set yourself up for a good performance. So I like to have a distributed approach.
Talking about having a whiteboard and different ways of booking meeting, are you talking about source of meetings, or for example, from marketing or from outbound?
That's a good question. I think I break it up into channel and then source or trigger. So with channel, you have phone, email, social media, namely LinkedIn, but I book some meetings over Twitter or WhatsApp, and also you also have video or texting. All of these are either general or obscure ways to break through to the prospect. In terms of triggers, you might have something like a job change where someone, is starting at a company in the past 3 months. So they're a little bit more primed to, take a meeting. You might have a marketing trigger like a blog post where your company posts content and you send that content to a prospect that you think is relevant. If Elric, you cover reporting for sales and I have a reporting software, I'm sure we're going to release some blog that you're going to find interesting. So, that could be a trigger. And I would also say you can also build your own hook by creating value with the platform. So with Muck Rack, it's essentially a software that allows PR people to work within it. So what do PR people do? They're tracking coverage, they're building relationships with journalists, etc. So if I'm tracking their company's coverage and I send them a report that they like, if they had Muck Rack, they will be sending to their boss, saying, hey, these are, the stats for this coverage. If I'm sending that to them, then I'm helping them out. And I think that's value you can curate yourself, which really tells the prospect that you actually know what they do and that you care about them besides just getting your meeting quota.
At Muck Rack, are you sending let's say you have a prospect A, can you do the report and then you send them like a lead magnet or something like that to get some interest from them, or what do you do with that?
It's seldom I'm sending a report. I'm like, here you go, and I hope and wait. Generally, I try to have multiple hooks in the message of hooking them with, because like I said, they work with journalists. So I might use Muck Rack to find journalists that cover their topic. So let's say it's sales development. Journalists that cover sales development. I say, hey, Elric, Jacob and John are covering this topic in Muck Rack, and here's a comprehensive report on the data. Hope you find this interesting, and would love to connect around how this could potentially improve X, Y, and Z in your workflow. And then I call it a day. Keep it pretty simple because I've in the beginning of my career, I've set the paragraphs, and people don't read that.
Yeah,
You know?
especially with collab. So
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think outbound is changing really a lot, and the way you are doing it, leading with value, you can show basically what you're talking about here is basically it's the problem that Muck Rack can solve, but you're already showing them to them. You say, hey, here's how Muck Rack could help you, and that's I think a great way to start because it's not just hey, jump on a demo and you will see how we can help you. No, you're already showing them that what they can get from it, and if they already see value, it's easier for them to say yes for having a fast conversation.
100%.
If we go back to time management, because you are talking about all those different channels and triggers that you are using, so how do you split how do you organize your day?
In terms of the structure, so I on strategic accounts, I am assigned companies. So I don't.
Can you say how many accounts do you have?
Yeah. So I maybe between it fluctuates between 400 to 500. So I know a lot of other SDRs. They might part of their prospecting is finding the company, and for me, part of prospecting is more so replacing finding the company with building relationships. Because you can imagine after 2.5 years, if you work the same amount of companies and you're spraying and praying, you will go through every contact in like three to 5 months, and you'll be like, "What do I do now?" But part of my job, like hitting goal consistently over 2.5 years, is leveraging what I said in terms of channels. LinkedIn, I've booked 18% of my meetings, and really finding new contacts. Yes, that's a part of it, but also building relationships with old contacts. I've had contacts that I've dialed either, in terms of structuring my day. In the morning, I do a lot of European work because, they're 5 hours ahead of Eastern. So, I've had some UK contacts where I'll call them, and it's actually magnificent how they have enthusiasm talking to me as if I'm a friend. They're like, "Hey, Jacob, good to hear from you, blah, blah, blah." And what that's a testament of is every day I prioritize where can I build relationships. There's been a contact where she switched out of my ideal consumer persona, but I saw she got a promotion, and I just emailed her and said, "Hey, no really hard sell here. Just happy you got a promotion. Cheers." Call it a day. It's little things like that in my mindset where I'm not trying to necessarily book a meeting with everything I do. I'm more so trying to have a presence in my segment.
Okay. And now, could we talk about more specifically, because like you said, you don't pick your account, so they give them to you. So you have more time to spend, like you said, spend time on building relationship or maybe preparing your session for your prospecting session. So could you share with us how you prep a prospecting session?
First, I start with a comprehensive look, a bird's eye, 10,000 foot view, and then I zoom down to a macroscopic view. So I'll look at the amount of people in the company. Some of these companies, hundreds of contacts in our ideal consumer persona. So it's going to be really challenging if you're just picking at random. So for those really large employee counts, then I'll structure it by title, from end user to decision maker, or maybe even the champion, because another trigger is if they've been at a company that has used Muck Rack in the past, right? So you have a little bit of it in there. But yeah, so I'll look at each employee, and each title I will assign a designation to, in the sense of, okay, if Elric is a director, he's not going to care about a value that will be more tailored to an end user. He's going to care more about, broad picture ROI to communicate to stakeholders, etc. So having a good understanding of each persona helps me to multi-thread, because I can send one email to an end user with a little bit of value, send one marketing trigger like a blog or a job change. I can message the director with something relevant, like, "Hey, we had a conversation in 2020. Would love to reconnect because there's massive updates made to the platform. I think it's relevant because of X, Y, and Z." And then I can have a LinkedIn strategy separate to that, because you don't know if emails are going to bounce, or whether some people send emails, they get no response and they think, oh, it was a bad email. But, they're the filter on the prospect's email inbox might just have caught it or something, so I have a comprehensive approach. So when I look at an account that I haven't touched, I'm hitting them at all angles, but I'm not spamming them, because too many times early in my career, I've gotten, take this whole company off of your list. Like, because what I'm imagining is if you're hitting everyone at the same time, they're just, hey, did you get an email from this Jacob guy? He is so annoying, right? So I have to have a little bit of a distributed approach, hit a couple people here, set a task for 2 weeks later, hit a couple of people here. And yeah, I try to just vary my approach. If I'm sending everyone a video and it's not working, it's just not a good approach. So I'll send someone a video, someone on LinkedIn, I call someone, and then I just switch it up.
Curious about the end users. You mentioned that you have like a multi-thread approach. So what do you say? What do you send to an end user? You said you are trying to send them some value. So what do you say?
With the end user, what I try to do is embrace the objection. And by that, I mean, they're going to give you an objection. It's either going to be, I don't have any time. I'm not the decision maker. There's no point in even us connecting, all of that. I try to embrace it early on. So I try to say, like, I know for a fact that you might not make a decision on this, but the reason that I'm reaching out to you is because it is very valuable on our end and on your end to see what the market offers. If you've only used an Apple phone all your life, you're not going to know the value of a Samsung phone, and vice versa. So I explain it like that. Obviously, for us, even if they're not the decision maker, it's impactful to get the perspective of someone who will be using the platform every day. They also can become a champion to, the internal decision makers. So in terms of what I send to them, I'm going to send something that I think is relevant to their day to day. Some people in the job description, they might have, oh, I work with journalists. Okay, cool. So that means I'm going to send something around journalists. I'm not going to send a report, because if I send a report, they're like, I don't even do reports. I just, I'm working with journalists. So I try to send something relevant to their day. I try to keep it light, because if you overwhelm the prospect with your messaging, then you're just going to end up left on red. They're going to open it. They're not going to respond. So something light and something valuable.
If you go back to what you're saying about the research about an account, you are talking about you based on title, you try to figure out who's the end user, the decision maker, the champion. What other criteria do you use for your research? You were talking about previous conversation, for example, from the past year, but what are you looking for?
I'm looking for any correspondence at all. And I don't even care if I've only gotten objections. I could have gotten, take me off your list. We're not looking for this right now. And then I'm going to be contacting the next person saying, either way, I've talked with Elric. He told me that it wasn't the right time, but the reason I'm reaching out, so I'm trying to get ahead of that objection. And when I do that, it's kind of hard for them to repeat the same objection back to me. Because if they say, well, it's not the right time. Yeah, I said that. That's why I was reaching out, and I have a different hook. So they have to hit me with a different objection. So obviously that's like the worst case scenario, but the best case scenario is we've done a demo with them before, or in the past we've had conversations about use case or whatever, because then I can name drop and really use it as the opportunity to grab some social proof. Like, yeah, well, this isn't the first time we've talked before.
Yeah, and I know for big account that works very well to use the information you use from that you found internally, because enterprise accounts, they are really tough to get in. So using information you get from someone else, it's key here. I know when we were preparing the episode, you were talking about, you shared with me that you use a parallel dialer for your outreach. So how do you use that? Do you use that? Actually, if I was curious, do you call also end users, or end users, do you just send them emails?
So I parallel dial everyone.
Okay, everyone.
And the way I use it is really a part of my daily workflow now, in the sense of in the morning and the afternoon, I make dials, and there's been a game changer. I've had cold call experience in the past, but cold calling is relatively new to the SDR organization here at Muck Rack.
Okay.
But parallel dialing, what it has done is it's made the process more efficient, and I'm having more conversations than ever, which is what we want. And like you kind of like what you said, is what we want in the
Yeah.
enterprise. We really want to have that discussion.
Yeah.
Even just yesterday, I had 9 conversations, and we don't know where those 9 conversations will go. But the point is that they happened, and the way that I will use it in terms of director and end user, I really don't have a different script for each persona, because I don't want to over intellectualize what I'm doing. You know, those people who they do 20 minutes of research before making the call. I don't want to do that. What I want to do is have a very broad approach with the call. So my broad approach being that I'm hopping on the phone with you. I'm asking you, how have you been? Very simple question that it's hard to be mean. It's hard to be mean and give an objection to how have you been, you know? And after I get past that, there's usually some hook that I can think of on the spot. A lot of times it's, hey, I'm working with similar teams who X, Y, and Z. Have you heard Muck Rack's name tossed around in the PR arena or whatever? That's like the generic, but sometimes if, Elric, I talked to you 2 years ago, I'm not even saying my name when I'm getting on the phone. I'm saying, hey, Elric, we talked 2 years ago. It's Jacob Farmer, Muck Rack, you remember? And just having any hook will help me get conversations. But in terms of broadly the parallel dialing, it's been a game changer in really booking meetings, because if you're trained, it's the best weapon you can have. I think my last 9 meetings have come from calls.
Something you mentioned, the way you're using it, because for me, I'm still new with those kind of tools. So I used it last year, and we are testing 3 to 4 calls, dials at the same time. So, and you are mentioning that you do 2 dials at the same time. Could you share why do you do 2 dials at the same time?
Sure. The way a lot of parallel dialers work, if there's a simultaneous connection, they will hang up on the other prospect, and then it'll create a new pipeline for you to call after you called everyone on your current list. To me, that's inefficient, because let's say 2 people pick up at the same time. That could be the only time the second person picks up. Like, if you call them back, then they go to voicemail, and you're like, missed the opportunity. But if it's a little bit of a lower cadence, I think you get the efficiency of calling more than one people without the risk, because it's about risk. Without the risk of calling 5 people, they all pick up, and then none of them pick up when you call them back. Right? I'm chasing conversations and not necessarily call volume.
Something else so you mentioned to me is you use video. Earlier you were talking about you send the report to your prospect when it's relevant, but also you started to test videos to show how they could use the platform, or how they could use the platform. So could you share with us how you use that?
Sure. I take it as an opportunity to not only show something that they couldn't get in a screenshot, but I take it as an opportunity to show the functionality of the platform. So if you were demoing, your phone to someone who wants to buy your phone, right? What you're not going to do is send a picture of your phone and say, hey, it looks good, right? What you're going to do is you're going to go on your phone, you're going to swipe through the apps, you're going to show how smooth it moves through each screen, etc. So that's really what I approach video for. And I do 45 seconds to a minute and 30 seconds in video. And when I send the video, I attach it with a very brief message, because I'm already asking them to watch a video, right? So I don't want them to have to read a whole book as well in my email. So in the video, generally I'll keep the introductions light, because that's not what they're watching the video for, and I'll really attack something relevant in their day to day. So even for this podcast, if it's like, oh, Eric, I'm sure you're looking to get more listeners, so here is how you use Muck Rack to find podcasters who can help promote your blah blah blah, and you go through that process, and what you'll find is that people appreciate the intentionality that you took to send that message, instead of just, you want to meet? Do you want to meet? Please, I need a meeting for my quota. Instead of doing that, you're actually putting thought into your message.
And those videos, do you send them via email or LinkedIn?
I send them via email. I've heard LinkedIn is really good too.
If they don't reply, what do you say? Because I know if you send a video, it's a lot of time to record a video. So what do you say next if they don't reply?
It would just be business as usual. I'm still calling, emailing, trying to follow up. I like to do high energy, low energy, high energy. So video is very high energy. I want to do a low energy touch next. I'm not going to send a video and the next thing send a GIF and a report next because it's overloading the prospect. If they look through the email thread, they're going to have so much to read and process that what I want is a very easy experience for the prospect. So I'll send low energy follow ups after that. And if there's nothing, no opens, I'll send the video to someone else, and I'll be like, "Hey, I sent this video to I sent this video to Elric. I would love your thoughts on this because I think it might be relevant for you too."
When you say high energy, high energy video, low energy is just text, for example, or
Yeah, low energy is just text, and it's a minimum amount of text. So those little bump replies, like, "Hey, have you seen this?"
yeah.
Type replies. Yeah.
When I was preparing the episode, I found like an article on Muck Rack website about you. You got an interview, and you said something interesting on the interview, and I wanted to ask you a few questions about that. So, since you joined the company, you mentioned that you've seen that there is strategies that stop working, and you need to adapt to that. So, how do you identify what to change, and can you provide an example of a tactical change you've made recently?
As an SDR, you should be tracking everything that's working and everything that isn't working. So the first way I do this is through a demo tracker, and I'll use a spreadsheet. Even I'm looking at my demo tracker now, and I have the deal status of each tracker, the deal amount, the sequence that won the meeting, like the channel, and etc. So after you track everything that's working, what you need to do is really analyze, okay, my last 9 meetings have come from calls. How do I pivot more into this? Even if I'm already calling a fair bit. So now what this is telling me is not that I'm being very successful with call, but I'm being less successful with email and other channels. So I have 2 options. I can either try to increase the market share of the email and LinkedIn and all of that, or I can double down in what's working. And you spend more time in calling and all that. A good example is that earlier on in my career, I was doing a lot of spraying and praying because it was working. You only do what works. I was spraying and praying. It was working. It stopped working. And one of my strategies is really to go to everyone in my internal network at the company, say, what are you doing? How is it working? Any advice for me? I don't care if I'm going to someone who's very junior. I don't know if they have an idea that, I could take from. So I'll go to everyone, get advice, and then I'm going to switch it up completely. And I'm talking about switch it up completely, even if it's against who I am as a person. So me, I'm not someone who does video, just because I'm closer to a perfectionist. So when you're recording the video, you make one mistake, you're like, all right, time to do it over again. So even me, I had to overcome that, and kind of like what I told you in the interview, I sourced a very good opportunity through that. And that's an example of how I was able to pivot, and it ended up working out.
For video, a trick for me that works to do that, it's to set a limit of 3 takes. Usually you say 3, that's it. And even though you do a mistake on your number 3, recording number 3, you still send it.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And it also makes you more human in the video. Like, if you sound like a robot, reading off a teleprompter, like, it might be less effective.
Exactly. And I really like the fact that you are talking about asking for everyone what's working for them, because I think that's a great way. On top of that, something that I'm doing at every company I'm working at, it's shadowing top performers, because I think it's great to ask tips to everyone. What do you think is working? But also a lot of people, they don't know sometimes what's working, or they don't know to self-reflect on what they are doing. So generally, it's I shadow them. So if you're on a remote environment, is on a Zoom call, they share the screen, and you just observe what they are doing. That's it. Pretty straightforward. And then when you are not on a call with them, is to listen to their calls. What do they say? How do they start the call? And then something else for SDR specifically, it's what sequences do they use, what channel do they use, and then what you are talking about your spreadsheet, using a spreadsheet, you do the same and you do the same for them, and you analyze what's working for them, and so you understand also based on analytics what's working.
100%.
And now I'm curious also, because you were talking about you have your spreadsheet, you are talking about you could double down on what's working or focusing on emails or LinkedIn, for example. So how often do you check your spreadsheet? Is it like on a monthly basis, and then you do your analysis and then you take some action, or what's your process?
I check it every day. The reason for this is twofold. The first reason is I have in my demo tracker, I also have a warm pipeline section. And by warm pipeline section, I mean sometimes I'm not even chasing a meeting. I'm chasing a no but, a quote unquote no, comma, but. Because a lot of times when I get the no, but reach back out to me in a couple months, or no, but I'd be interested in this down the line, a lot of these become very warm opportunities for me to follow up with. And when I call, email, LinkedIn, all of that, what I can do is say, hey, we talked in February. You said this was the right time. And I have that in, and it's been really useful for me. And so I check it every day for that, for the warm pipeline. But in terms of my demos booked, I want to be diligent about checking where demos stand. Not only because of the obvious reason of like checking, oh, when is it going to close type of situation, but also because the account executives that I work with is very busy. And if there's an opportunity for me to jump in and ping someone who, let's say, rescheduled or who said reach back out to them in August, if there's an opportunity for me to do that, I want to do that. So I really want to be diligent about checking where everything is at. And it's also a good learning opportunity because you get to see the mechanics of how these conversations go. And even on the sales development track, if you're talking to someone and they talk about red lines or they talk about these very specific terms that you don't experience at the top of the funnel, if they talk about these things, you want to be able to know what they're talking about. So if they say, yeah, it didn't work out because of contract stuff, you should be able to know what that means for your segment. And then you should be able to have a rebuttal, because if you only know how to respond to no time, no budget, etc., you're not going to be in a good position when they give you something, an objection that is based off of being down the line in the process.
Last question, because we're already at the end of the conversation, but based on your experience, what's the biggest mistake made by SDRs and how can they overcome it?
I think the biggest mistake is thinking that their pipeline isn't in their own hands. It's easy to complain about a lack of inbound leads, or that no one is responding to your emails, or that all you get on the phone is objections. But the truth of the matter is that the best of the best don't care about what obstacle comes their way. They're finding a way to move forward and succeed regardless. So my advice to overcome this lack of accountability is, one, product mastery. You want to really know your product inside and out, and that will be the key to knowing how to respond to any objection. Almost anything in the company, learning the product better will help you. Number two, diligent practice of how you present on all channels. Like you were talking about in the video, you implemented a strategy and a system of 3 takes, no matter what. What does that do for you? What that does for you is it makes you more efficient with each take, because you know you only have 3 takes. So what you did was you practice how you present on all channels: video, email, call. And then number 3 is a proactive pursuit of feedback. And, there might be a situation where there's a manager who lets you get by without trying to develop yourself. And you might think like, oh, that's good, they're not on my back. I don't encourage micromanagement, but what I do encourage is a manager who challenges you to look at yourself and try to get better. So you should be how people say they're a voracious reader. You should be a voracious pursuer of feedback.
Yeah, this one I think it's a really good one, because like you said, some managers, they won't give feedback proactively, so and you need to look for them. So and you should maybe on a daily basis like for feedback, and that doesn't matter if it's an email or a cold call or whatever, but you need to look for this. So great one. Well, Jacob, we are at the end of the episode, but before we wrap up the episode, do you have anything else you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, I think SDRs get a bad rap. but I love sales development, and I think anyone who pursues a career here will be happy they did.
Perfect. Jacob, thank you so much for being on the show today. And for everyone listening, I see you on the next episode.
Thank you, Edward.
If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to leave a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. So for Spotify, to leave a review, what you can do is you can use your phone, then go on the Spotify app, then you go to the SDR game page, and then at the top of the page, you can leave a review. It's a 5-star review if you enjoyed the episode, obviously. And then if you are listening to this episode on Apple Podcasts, feel free also to leave a review on your app. Thanks for listening, and I see you on the next episode.